Another Olympia weekend has come and gone, but with this year's lineup being so stacked and so competitive, we still have a ton to talk about. For my first video in my Olympia Fallout coverage, I want to discuss this year's top two, which included Hadi Choopan, who was runner-up yet again this year, and Derek Lunsford claiming his second Sandow title, and being the second man in history to win a non-consecutive title after losing his prior. These two have faced off plenty of times at this point, but this might have been their closest matchup yet. Just take a look at the scorecard. Derek was winning in prejudging, he was close to a perfect score, which would have been 5 points, but at finals, Hadi actually pulled ahead by 1 point. With that said, on the surface before doing this comparison, after just watching the live stream, I do want to stress I was not there in person, but based on everything I saw, I do disagree with the results. So in today's video, I really want to dissect these top two going pose by pose, and I want to see if that opinion holds. Did Derek deserve this Olympia title this year, or was Hadi yet again snubbed for first? Let's jump into today's video to find out. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos and want to see more of my Olympia coverage, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Now, most would assume Derek just has to take the front double. Well, I invite you to open your eyes and take a gander at the details. If this contest boiled down to one thing, it's that. Detail, detail, detail. And I'm not just strictly talking about the condition level between the two athletes. I'm also talking about those smaller components to these poses that an athlete may or may not have. In this pose, for instance, yeah, Derek may have a slight advantage in the silhouette, but take a closer look. The legs are a bit bigger than Hadi's, but I wouldn't call them better. With Hadi, you get deeper separation, better hardness, and even some feathering in the teardrop. And the torso heap, I really do like both guys, how could you not? But again, check the details. Hadi has the smaller waist, the deeper vacuum, and just as good of taper. Although Derek is a bit more exaggerated with his V taper. I'd call him the winner here, but not by much. And finally, in the arms, Derek straight up hurt me to look at. Those don't even look like a set of arms made of muscle. Those are two limbs completely comprised of oil and inflammation. Now, Hadi's arms are not good, don't get it twisted, but there is still separation to his muscle and he has real peaks to his bicep. Derek's might as well be tubes of sausage. I don't know if you guys have seen that post comparing the top four's arms, but take a look here. When Synthol Samson is whooping your ass in the arms, you know you f***ed up. Overall, Derek does have the slightly better silhouette, which is important for this pose, but when you really take a look at all these different areas, his argument to win, one of his best shots actually, pretty much falls apart. The deciding factors in this pose are those small details from the condition that Hadi has to just actually having a set of arms worth a damn. Now in this comparison, we're going to use my usual 2, 3, 4 point system for small, medium, and large wins. This one is narrow, but with those small details in his column, Hadi takes the first pose in the matchup. The front lat spread is usually a bigger win for Hadi, but with these versions, while he still wins, it's just going to be narrow. I still prefer the legs on him, and I prefer him in the torso this time, mainly for just a little better lat width and exposure for this shot. I still prefer him in the legs, and I prefer him in the torso this time, mainly for a little better lat width and exposure for this shot. The chest on Derek is usually a big problem for me, but I don't think Hadi is much better here. He's harder, Derek's level of detail sucks, but Hadi is really flat. The arms and delts are also bigger on Derek. So yeah, at this point with Hadi fading a little and not being as big, and with Derek getting even bigger, I don't think Hadi holds onto this pose with as firmly as a grasp as he used to. But like Steve Weinberger's peg leg and Derek's hand, Hadi still has a loose grip on this pose. For the side chest, I'm happy to say this could go either way because both guys are pretty good. I don't see an area on either guy that isn't immediately checked by another area by their opponent. The side leg maybe goes to Hadi this time because Derek isn't as conditioned here as he normally is, but I'm not set on that. Hadi's winning the midsection, I am pretty set on that, but that's only worth so much here. I guess you can give Derek the arms and delts for not having the lumps, but the namesake of the pose, the chest, is pretty much a dead heat. So since this pose is close, I decided to use the IFBB's golden rule. When in doubt, turn Derek out.
It's hard, man.
Oh, I'm sorry, I mean when in doubt, give it to Derek. What I'm trying to say is give Derek the pose if it's close. Legitimately, I do like his execution a bit more, so I don't really feel bad about giving a close pose to him based on that. But for real, this is 50-50, you can take your pick. In the rear double, I think we can really see Hadi's age starting to catch up to him slowly but surely. It was already his weakest pose, but it's getting a little weaker every year. The hams, adductors, and quad sweeps look downsized this year, so although he is still in condition, Derek wins downstairs. In fact, this is the one area where Derek has more detail to, so it's a double whammy. In the back, things hardly get better for Hadi, his lats are creeping up, and the details and thickness in the back aren't popping as much as before. All in all, that's still an okay pose, it's not bad, but with Derek's monstrous back and bigger and more shredded lower body, he takes the biggest win of the comparison so far with 3 points. In the rear lat spread, we usually get a pretty good switch up that benefits Hadi. His back always transforms here, but I don't think his back had quite that sting this time around. I cannot reward Derek. His back is really round, but that's exactly the main issue I have with it. He has the separation and muscle quality of a beach ball. Even though Hadi's details are not as etched in and the ridges are not as thick and as prominent with this version, he's still running insanely far ahead of Derek when it comes to condition and detail. Hadi even wins on width, too. Derek takes the lower body once again, nothing changes there, but it's not enough to dilute what happened upstairs. So goes the back, so goes the pose. But again, not as convincingly as it used to be. But a win is a win, and this pose scores Hadi 2 points. For the side tricep, I unfortunately had to resort to using a full call-out photo, so it is a little blurry, but I do want to mention that I did in fact make sure to grab a photo from prejudging and not finals. Remember, Derek was better, or at least scored higher, at prejudging, and since I started this video on the Hadi train, I wanted to make sure I'm giving Derek the advantage anywhere I can. But even when I tried to give him the advantage, in the actual pose itself, I was almost forcing myself to pick him. I even had the points for this pose in his column when I first made the scorecard. But after I kept looking back at this pose, I just couldn't do it. Derek has some things to like about this pose, but other things I just despise. He has good width and the better tricep, but the soggy pecs midsection make yet another appearance. Hadi decimates him the midsection, and I'd give him the side leg too for the deeper separation. I guess you could take a look at the good things on Derek and give him a small win for those, but you'd have to be willing to take the good with the bad. I prefer a pose that has less weaknesses, so I'm giving Hadi 2 points. As usual, there is no real discussion to be had here. I guess Derek is making some minimal improvements to his abs and thighs pose. We can at least see some level of detail, but overall it just still looks weird. I don't know what it is exactly. It's like the skin of his abdomen just doesn't lay well on the actual muscle. Maybe he's holding water, I don't really know. Your guess is as good as mine. Not only are his abs weird, but the waist is pretty blocky without his vacuum, and the rest of the torso stuff, including the chest and lats, all looks washed out like the abs. This isn't even a picture of Hadi hitting the proper shot, but it doesn't matter. We all know he has the head-on shot, a twisting shot, and a vacuum. All of those variations beat Derek. Now, to be fair, I think Derek could be beating Hadi in the quads, it's hard to tell, but at minimum he does have decent quads in the shot, and I guess something in the way of abs with this version. I do want to be conservative too, so we won't make this a clean sweep for Hadi, but just a 3-pointer. And finally, in the most muscular, I still don't have too much to say. It's not a blowout, but Hadi is most certainly an upgrade to Doughboy Derek. Derek is bigger in the legs, but yet again, that doesn't mean better. I'll take Hadi for the better detail. Derek's also bigger in the arms and delts, but Hadi's definitely more separated even up here. But I will have to give the upper limbs to Derek because Hadi's are lacking too much tricep sweep and even forearms for my liking. And he has the delt issue. After that though, Hadi absolutely kills Derek in the chest and the abs. So combine those wins with his smaller win in the quads, and I think this is a decent win for Hadi. Now, he's not the biggest, so it's hard for me to justify a big margin here in the most muscular of all poses, but he's still an obvious upgrade, and that's worth the win, even if it's just 2 points. And next we have the second round of judging, which consists of the 4 overall physique categories: muscularity, condition, shape, and flaws. We're still using the same 2, 3, 4 point system, but now we have the categories to judge instead of just the poses. And I do allow ties in this round. Let's go ahead and start with condition. It may not be as big of a win as you might think, but a win for Hadi nonetheless. But when you think about it, they still kinda split this category at first. Hadi wins condition from the front, but Derek wins from the back, with the side being pretty close. Probably leaning towards Hadi though. With that said, I think we can all agree Hadi held up a lot better from the rear than Derek did from the front. Nothing on Hadi was as soft and soggy as Derek's chest, arms, or abs. Honestly, I think Hadi kind of wins this category anyway, but with those big areas on Derek being so bad, I could see an argument in bumping this win up for Hadi. I'm just going to make it 2 points for Hadi though to be conservative. Next we have muscularity, and finally Derek peels this category away from Hadi. I thought this was a slightly smaller version of Hadi at this year's Olympia, and Derek was honestly at his biggest. That didn't do him any favors in the first category, but it does help him here. Even though Hadi beat him in most of the poses, it was almost never because he was bigger than Derek. It was usually for the better quality and things of that nature. Derek was pretty much bigger everywhere and still has a big advantage in the back when you average the 2 poses. So let's give Derek a small win here. Then in the shape category, I'm actually going to make this a tie. To be honest, I don't really think Derek is that aesthetic outside of his front double. Take away his vacuum and you'll find that he looks pretty blocky, honestly even more so than Hadi. I mean, Hadi does have the smaller waist. Honestly, with this look that Derek brought to the Olympia, he looked a little bit too muscular for his frame. I just don't think his structure can handle the size as well as some of the other guys. All in all, he does have good shape in certain poses, but in some shots I just straight up prefer Hadi. From an overall perspective, I might even prefer Hadi, but since this is the most subjective category, we'll call it a tie. And finally, we have the flaws category. Really, there are 2 main things that bug me between these two: Derek's soft spots and Hadi's delts. Well, we pretty much already accounted for Derek's piss poor condition in some areas, but we gotta account for Hadi's delts. And since I was already on the Hadi train going into this matchup, I want to make sure I'm seeing Hadi with clear eyes and giving him a sober assessment. I know the pointy delts matter a lot to the judges, although I don't think they were that bad at this event. They've certainly been worse, but I still gotta make sure he gets punished for them, so he will take a small loss to end this round of judging. Alright, now it's time to reveal the final scores and who I think was the rightful winner of the 2025 Mr. Olympia. Winning this comparison with 60.8 points to his opponent's 39.3 points was Hadi Choopan, which means, yes, I do think he should have beaten Derek at this year's Olympia. Now, this is actually a pretty decent score for Derek in my book. I've done a lot of different matchups between him and Hadi, and usually because I'm so put off by a lot of his different versions, Derek's not usually scoring 40 points like he did today. With that said, with his 2025 Olympia package, I'm not too upset that he won. I'm not as disgruntled as I was back in 2023, where it was just way too obvious, but what we got this weekend was a superior version of Derek and a closer matchup. But make no mistake about it, just because I think it was one of their closer matchups doesn't mean I think he should have won. I don't think Derek should have any Olympia title, including the one he won this weekend. It boils down to the same argument as it always does. Derek has a couple of great points to his physique and some really bad areas, and the stuff in between is just painfully average or even a little below. Hadi, on the other hand, is a lot more even with his physique development, and he has less weaknesses. Honestly, I don't even know if Derek's usual high highs but low lows argument holds up so well with this 2025 version. I mean, it was his biggest package to date, and of course he'll always have that great back, but outside of those things, what else does he have going for him? The back is one area. In fact, he didn't even win both of the poses, just the rear double, and his new level of size just opened up a whole new can of worms, and made his usual main weakness even worse. That, of course, being his condition. Honestly, I should have punished him more in this category. The more I looked at pics and vids from this event, the more I realized just how soft and smooth he looked, even more than normal. And sure, he has a couple of places that are shredded, but I really only mean a couple. Outside of the glutes and hams, he can only pull together somewhat passable condition in things like the quads, maybe. Other than that, he looked like a muddled mess. Again, this comparison was like putting an unrefined ball of clay that you found down by the riverbank against a fully finished sculpture. And there were some other issues with Derek. The abs and thighs pose is still atrocious. The entire stomach when he doesn't do a vacuum is an issue for me, as his waist is honestly a little thick and the midsection is pretty washed out. And of course, you had his arms. I know Hadi had the delts, and that is more than a fair critique. But looking at both issues, I'll take Hadi's delts over Derek's arms, if you want to call them that. Again, it's debatable just how much of those are even real muscle. On the other side of this matchup, you had Hadi. His quality, as always, was top notch. The shape on these two was very comparable, if not a little bit better on Hadi, and his delt issue isn't even my biggest gripe between the two. So at that point, what does that leave us with? Well, Derek did have the size advantage, but that clearly didn't matter a whole lot. Look at the poses. Derek won the rear double, of course, and he took the side chest, but that was 50-50. After that, I didn't give him anything, and I don't really think I could change my answer on any of the poses either. I could maybe give him the side tricep, but I went ahead and did the math. Flipping that pose still gives Hadi the win. And we have to talk about the highs and lows of the poses. Hadi's weakest pose is the rear double, which is still a pretty average pose. So really, Hadi doesn't have what I'd call a truly weak pose. He has just decent shots, but nothing as bad as Derek's abs and thighs are most muscular. Those poses suck, quite frankly. So overall, yeah, Derek might have been a bit bigger than Hadi with these versions, but that is definitely not enough to net him the win. He had the condition and muscle quality of a meatball. The shape wasn't a selling point for him since Hadi was at least able to nullify his win there, and Derek has some issues with his physique too. Hadi's quality advantage was massive. His shape was also just as good, and he won more poses. Clearly, he just had the better overall package between the two. Again, this was not the worst version of Derek to defile a stage and still win, but I have most versions of Hadi beating even Derek's best version, so this outcome isn't too surprising. Again, I'm not that upset since this was closer to the best Derek we've ever seen, but the same old argument between these two still stands. Derek is extremely underwhelming and flawed, while Hadi still manages to bring one of the most complete and well-rounded physiques ever to the Mr. Olympia stage. And had I been on the judging panel, like most of you, I would have been putting Hadi Choopan in first place. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. What did you guys think of this year's Mr. Olympia top 2? Just between these two, who would you have winning, Derek or Hadi? And as a whole, would you have maybe preferred to see Andrew Jack take the title this year? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you guys like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. And if you guys want to get your hands on some high quality supplements while supporting my channel even further, head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, use my code PROJECT10 to get 10% off your entire order. That's code PROJECT10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.